So first and foremost, I think what needs to be understood about Patreon, that maybe Patreon themselves doesn't understand, is that they are a banking website, first and foremost. What Patreon's job is to take people's money and redistribute it to somebody else. You know, to move money around, essentially. And that's the most important thing that the website does, and that seems to be what it is the worst at doing. Now, I'm joined here by Endless Jess, my good friend, fellow person with a Patreon who makes a career through Patreon. Introduce yourself, maybe.
I'm that guy that he said, and, well, I do indeed have a Patreon.
Patreon seems
a nightmare, a waking nightmare that no one should do, but it's also my livelihood, and everyone should pledge to me, and no one should ever unpledge.
Well, that's the problem here.
Yeah.
The problem here is that there's only Patreon. It's really the only good... I mean, if there was some way to have all your fans reliably just send you money on PayPal every time you made a video, that would be great, but it's a huge pain in the ass, you know?
Yeah.
We pay Patreon, you know, Patreon makes a lot of money off of us, you know? They get like 5% of all our earnings, maybe more than that. I'm not sure how much they make, but they get a sizable percentage of our earnings just to make our lives easier by distributing this money.
Yeah, so their one job is to be reliable and give you your fucking money on time, and most of the time they can't seem to do it. And you can't complain about it because it's all you have. So if you go public and say, hey, every other month on this website there's some new goofy glitch or some screw up in the system that makes me not get my money on time, or makes my, you know, my numbers seem wrong, or makes the money get lost in some void for days at a time and you don't know where it is, even though that happens like almost every month, you can't say anything about it publicly for fear that people will be like, well, then I'm not going to use that system, and they're going to unpledge. And that's why I think Patreon gets away with it. They get away with this with not working, because everyone who has a Patreon doesn't want to say anything about how broken and crappy it is.
Well, I think the part of the problem also is that it's different for everybody. I personally don't run into a lot of the issues that you do, though I've had a few, but like you in particular have had a lot of things go wrong with your Patreon, which is why I wanted to have you on this particular video. And this video is going to be called Patreon Needs Competition. I mean, again, we rely on Patreon. We would very much like you to give to our Patreons. It's how we make most of our money. But Patreon needs to change certain things, and I don't know how to inspire that change other than for someone else to do it better. And it seems to I think both of us, that the reason Patreon has these problems is that it seems to regard itself more as like a social media website as opposed to a banking website. The changes that Patreon makes to their website are always about like the look of people's pages, or like how to they added tags to Patreon posts, like the most useless thing I could ever imagine, because no one is sitting around on Patreon using it like a social media site to find new creators. And like a lot of the websites dedicated to that, and it's utterly meaningless because people link to their Patreon. No one's like finding new Patreons just by surfing through the list or surfing through tags. They're finding artists they love are sending them to a Patreon page, because that's just, they're saying, hey, you like my work, here, go there, give me money. And Patreon focuses on all these weird social media things that they're constantly bringing all these new things in, and I'm like, no, forget all that, fix the banking.
Yeah,
that's what I need you for.
The entire corporate attitude of Patreon and the Patreon staff, it seems to be one of, they're so proud to be at the forefront of crowdfunding, but they don't seem to understand the gravity of that responsibility. Because every time that something goes wrong, or like if you don't get your money on time or something, there's another weird glitch, as there is every month, and you don't know where your fucking money is that you need to live. So you shoot off a message to support, and to their credit, they message you back right away, usually, as long as it's on a weekday. But they message you back, and the support staff, they always have this infuriating flippant attitude about every problem, like, oh, gee
Right.
golly, our bad, whoopsie daisy. Like, no.
Yeah.
If I'm having a problem with my banking and my money, I don't want to hear, our bad, whoopsie daisy, gosh. I want you to take my livelihood seriously. This is a problem. Don't try to talk to me like you're my buddy or my friend. Just fix the fucking problem.
Everything about Patreon's, like, the way that they communicate is all in this very glib, kind of like cutesy hipster lingo, where they try to, like,
yeah,
they
they've
just
all
want
got
to
their
be
little
seen as
profile
cool.
pics on their email, so you can see them like sipping drinks with all their millennial pals, sitting in their fancy offices and in their beanbag chairs, playing with their hacky sacks. Like, whoa, isn't it cool that we've got this crazy new social media banking experience? It's not crazy. It's my job. It's my life.
It's a, like, I can't believe, like, at some point you were telling me that, you know, there was 1 month, I think, where your money just had completely disappeared. Like, you didn't know where it was. It didn't seem to be going into your bank or in the Patreon, and you were messaging them, like, what's going on? And they were like, we're having some kind of issue. And all I could think was, shouldn't they just send you the money? Like, regardless of whether they know where the actual money is, like the money that people have paid you, they should just send you $2,000 or whatever it was. You know, like, they have it. They have that money that you earned for them, you know.
Yeah,
like,
I'm sure their cut gets to them no problem.
Like, when a bank, you know, when a bank fucks, like, let's say somebody steals your credit card and someone goes and, you know, spends some money, and then you cancel that card and you tell the bank, they get the money back into your account. You know, it doesn't matter that they have to then go and figure out what happened. Like, you know, they don't get the money back in your account because they've already gone through the steps of finding out where the money was spent, you know, getting it back from the retailers and all that. No, they just give you your fucking money back because you are not responsible for these problems. You know, you just want to know that your bank's reliable. You just want to know that when something goes wrong, the money shows up because you need the money to live.
And it's like, I can go back and forth with support, and, like, yeah, I know they'll fix it eventually, but eventually isn't good enough when, you know, they won't respond to an email on the weekends, and every single thing they say they're gonna do takes, like, 5 days or so ever many business days. Like, it goes into your Patreon thing, and it goes, well, it'll transfer. First, it takes a couple days to accumulate in Patreon, and then it takes a couple days to go to your bank from Patreon. So if anything happens in between that, it's even more days of waiting, and you're shooting off messages, and every message takes a day for them to fucking respond, unless it's on the weekend, then they won't respond at all, and they'll forget all about it, and you have to send them another message on Monday like, hey, did you forget about the email I sent you on Friday? Just because you had 2 days off. Those were days where I was sitting here worrying about not getting paid on time, and meanwhile the days are ticking away, and now it's like the 15th of the month, and I still haven't been paid when I should have gotten my money on the 1st of the month. You pricks!
And what everyone needs to understand, especially Patreon, because Patreon's very proud of the idea that, like, they're liberating creators, that we don't have to have normal jobs because we have Patreon. Well, a normal job, what's great about it is the security of knowing that that big corporation is gonna get you your fucking paycheck on the 14th, you know, and the 1st. And, like, you're gonna get that money. The 1st and the 15th, rather. But you'll get that money, and you'll go to the bank and cash that check, and you'll have the fucking money the day you need it. And most people base their lives around that. They base, like, when am I going to buy groceries? When am I going to do this and that around the day they get money? With Patreon, you know, you get your money at the end of the month. That's when you're thinking, fucking January 1st, my money better be fucking ready. And it never is, because half the people get declined. And so for anyone who doesn't know about this, the number that you see on the Patreon page is a weird, warped number that is not necessarily reflective of what you get paid. It used to be that it showed you the total amount that's being pledged to you, but then now, at the end of the month, when inevitably a whole shitload of people's cards get declined, then it shows you the number after reducing all the declines. But you don't really know what that's going to be until the end of the month happens. Like if it says $1,300 on my Patreon and then February starts, half the cards get declined and that number goes down to $1,100, well, that means that that $200 that I thought I was making all month is $200 I did not actually make, you know? And the whole declining thing, I know it's not that people don't have the money, because I used to get declined all the time.
Yeah,
I had a perfectly
like
functional card
in the system, and it just like messes with people's information sometimes.
Yeah, I had a perfectly functional credit card. I patron a bunch of people, and for there was a few months where I was just constantly getting declined, and all I have to do to change it. This is what like the reason that the number usually climbs back up pretty quickly in the next few days is because Patreon sends you a message that you got declined, and then you just have to like resubmit your pledge and then it works, but then sometimes it doesn't. And so and nobody, like, they don't explain this to any of your patrons. None of them know what's going on. You know, they don't understand. Some of them don't even know they're being declined. Some of them don't know what's going on. So, you know, it's a huge clusterfuck of trying to get all this money to work right. And again, this is our livelihood. This is all the money we make. This is everything. Like, you know, Jesse's ability to stay in house and home is determined by making this money on time and being able to buy the, you know, if they say suddenly, this is what happened this month to, I think, both of us, where all of a sudden, and I have no idea why this happened, on February 1st, it gave me a message that was like, you need to re-enter your bank information. Yeah. Because there's been some kind of, I guess it was like a site-wide glitch.
It's this thing called like Stripe, which is like this weird like banking middleman between Patreon and your actual bank. And they changed, so they sent out a notification that said you have to update your Stripe stuff. So I go, you know, fine, whatever. I re-enter all my same shit into it as before. And then I'm like, okay, so what? So then my when I send payout to my bank, it's taking a mysteriously long time to get to my bank, and I'm starting to get worried.
You may have missed it, but there was a message when I did, because I did it myself. I re-entered the information, and it said, okay, we're now going to freeze the ability for you to take this money to your bank for the next 5 days.
What the fuck? You don't, like they tell you that after, by the way, after you've already done it.
Well, there was no other option.
Yeah, they put a gun to your head and say, you have to change this, so then you change it, and they go, well, because you changed it, we're putting a lock on your money for 5 days. What?
Right. So if I had, for some reason, like, what if I needed very badly to buy groceries that week, was counting on this money to be in my account, and it's not there for an extra 5 days, and it's just like, I needed that money, you know? This is my livelihood. At nowhere else would you accept this. You know, if you had a normal job and they were like, oh, we're just gonna withhold your check for 5 days, you'd be fucking pissed, you know? It would probably ruin your life.
Yeah. It's just and no one complains about it, because I think that like artists are so used to getting fucked in the ass that Patreon fucking you in the mouth doesn't seem as bad, but it is just as bad. It's still non-consensual and it's not right. You can't fuck me in the mouth like that, Patreon. You can't do it.
Yeah, again, like we don't have anywhere else to go, and that's the problem. Like, there's no good competition for Patreon. No one's complaining about it because everyone's just so happy to make anything, you know, that everyone's so blown away by the fact that they're making money. And I mean, even the two of us, we had to be jaded to this. We've been doing Patreon for almost 4 years now, you know, so like we've been doing this for a really long time, and it's just starting to whittle away at like, why does this not work? How has, like, you know, in the beginning it was like, okay, it's glitchy because it's new, but then as every time I get a notification about a Patreon update, it's about some fucking retarded social media shit, like we added tags to the posts. No one wanted that. No one cares. It will not benefit me at all to have tags on my fucking posts. And why do you keep changing the site layout every fucking 6 months, which means I have to redo all my like assets and everything to make it look right now that it's completely different, you know? Stop worrying about the social media aspect of Patreon. The reason Patreon should exist is for me to tell my fans, here's a link. Just go there, click the button, type a number, and you never have to look at it again. You know, no one's checking my Patreon page every day except for me. They just make a pledge and then they fuck off and never look at it again. You know, like, just make it a site that works for me, the person who's going to be on there every day, looking at my money, wondering why it's taking so long to get processed, you know, where, like, every month, like, if you set Patreon to just automatically pay out, it will take, like, a week and a half to 2 weeks before it'll actually pay you into the month. And if you do it at the start of the month, the first day is when most of the stuff gets processed. So at the end of the first day, I usually hit payout and have it all go to my bank. I'll come in there at the end of the month, and there's always like $50 just sitting in there that, like, it took all month to process that $50, you know, because of the people who got canceled or who got declined. I don't understand the whole declining thing. I don't know why it's so prevalent, but, like, I don't get why it hasn't been fixed yet. Like, I don't know if it's just that Patreon is not competent enough to fix it, but I'm over here looking at PayPal where I'm sending friends and family hundreds of dollars regularly and transferring back and forth from my bank, and there's no issues there. So I know it's possible. So why hasn't Patreon fixed these issues instead of worrying about all this other shit? And really, it's just the personality of the emails I get, the way that they carry themselves.
It makes the problem so much worse when you get those replies back and it's like, gosh. Ugh.
Right. Or just when they send out, like, they had that whole thing where they sent a video, like, they sent one video to all people who are patrons and one to all Patreon creators, like, thanks for being such a, like, we don't need this. No one wants this. I did not need a video about how grateful you are to me for being a Patreon creator. I know you're grateful. You make a shitload of money off of me. I expect you to use that money to make your fucking system work right so that I don't have to sit here and consider trying to figure out some other system to get my fans to pay me more directly. You know, like, I had to sit around thinking, what if I did just program my own fucking thing, learn to program so I could do that just to avoid these problems that you're giving me. Just fix the banking, or someone else do it. Someone else, like, the reason I want to put this video out there is as a, like, I think that because there's so little people criticizing Patreon, no one's realizing that there's an avenue for a different one. You know, it's like, well, if it seems like everyone likes Patreon, then why would we make competition? Yeah. Well, we're telling you right now, there's room for competition. If you made a better version of Patreon that works consistently and word gets out that it works better, we will move there. You know, unless Patreon improves theirs to match it.
They get their shit together and get me my money on time. Stop trying to be my buddy in their stupid little emails. Start taking my concerns seriously. I don't need you to be my buddy. I need you to be my online bottom bitch and get me my fucking money on time, or I'm gonna slap ya. We're gonna release more podcasts. We're gonna slap ya till no one uses Patreon anymore. We're gonna make our own Patreon, and it'll be called Gaytreon, and then we'll suck dicks. I didn't think that through. It was a bad idea. But
well, anyways, yeah, that's the main point we're trying to make. And don't get me wrong, you know, Patreon, it's obviously done a lot of good for us. I just want it to be better. I want them to fix it, you know, and if it takes whatever it takes for them to fix it, if that takes somebody else coming along and doing it better, then someone needs to do that. You know, it cannot stay this way. It cannot stay where sometimes Jesse, who really badly needs the money, doesn't get it for 2 or 3 weeks into the month, you know. It's unreasonable. That's it. Thanks for listening.
Watch us both be banned from Patreon for life.
Oh, and give us lots of money on Patreon.
Yeah, everybody, patreon.com/Jesse Wood. I take back everything bad I said about it. Everything bad I said about Patreon is a lie. I need that money, people. Pledge to me. Everybody pledge to patreon.com/Jesse Wood.